Okay, the play we chose was As You Like It. The characters in this play are Duke Frederick, Rosalind, Celia, and Touchstone in Duke Frederick's house. Duke Frederick is the villain, Rosalind is his daughter and the protagonist, Celia is foil, and Touchstone is the fool. Orlando is the villain in his house, Oliver is the protagonist and younger brother to Orlando, and Adam is a faithful former servant of Sir Roland, who is Orlando and Oliver's father. Phoebe and Silvius both live in the Forest of Ardennes, and they're both shepherds. Duke Signor is also living in the Forest of Ardennes. He was usurped by his brother, and he's living there with Jacques, or Jacques, who is a nobleman that has decided to go and help him. Summary of this play is that, without giving too much away, so Orlando is being treated very poorly by his older brother Oliver, who inherited all of their father's estate. And so Orlando decides to confront his brother, and his brother gets mad and later secretly tells a wrestler to try to kill him in a wrestling match. And Duke Frederick has Rosalind and Celia as part of his house, but he decides to kick Rosalind out, and Celia decides to follow her. After the wrestling match, many of the characters make their way to the Forest of Arden.
Here are some themes from As You Like It. Inheritance is a major plot point in this play, especially in setting up conflict between Oliver and Orlando. A question that Shakespeare seems to pose in relation to inheritance is whether character traits themselves are inherited or learned, if gentleness can be passed from parent to child, or if it is innate to an individual. Also discussed are the moral implications of inheritance, whether it is better for inheritance to pass to the eldest child by virtue of their birth, or if character and moral considerations should also be taken when inheritance is given. Pastoral life versus societal living is another theme in this play. There are two settings, the court and the woods of Arden. This serves as a way to show the perception of pastoral life at the time versus the reality of what shepherding actually was. We see also court manners versus country manners, which serves as a vehicle for a lot of comedy throughout the entirety of this play. The Woods of Arden are also shown as a place that is greater in its possibility than the court. Sibling rivalries is also a great theme in this play, especially between Duke Frederick and Duke Signor, as well as Orlando and Oliver. Oliver and Duke Frederick both seem to have jealousy for their brothers, but Rosalind and Celia serve as a foil to these relationships, having nothing but love for each other and desiring not power, but a good relationship. Finally, love, both romance and friendship or loyalty, is a powerful theme in this play. Romantic love in this play specifically follows a lot of the tropes of love, like Orlando and Rosalind falling in love at first sight. But surprisingly, Rosalind seems to recognize this in herself and gives speeches that seem to contrast her trope of falling in love and her understanding of what love actually is. We also see a lot of the friendship love in this play, both between Rosalind and Celia, as well as Orlando and Adam.
So now we're going to talk about some historical connections and context. So first off, we think As You Like It was written about 1598 to 1600, and this was right at the end of Queen Elizabeth's reign over England. The globe had just been built. We think it was built in about 1598. The Forest of Arden should be spelled Arden the French way with two N's, but Shakespeare decided to go with the English spelling, and this is particularly interesting because his mother's maiden name was Arden, spelled the English spelling. Then another thing is the commonplace book was really big during this era. It's thought that some of the quotes in As You Like It could have been written with that in mind. And then another big thing culturally was that the pastoral genre was really popular, and a lot were really fascinated with pastoral life and ideology. The major source material to As You Like It is Rosalind, which is a novel written by Thomas Lodge, published about 10 years earlier in 1590. Rosalind is a pastoral romance based on contemporary poetry. Shakespeare removed much of the introductory commentary so that he could spend more time focusing on the events in the Forest of Arden. And also Shakespeare's villains are a lot lighter. They're less grim and less sinister. This seems to be mostly for comedic effect. Shakespeare seems to focus more on the role of women. Rosalind even addresses the women first in the epilogue, while Lodge's Rosalind begins with to gentlemen readers. So Shakespeare seems to be directing his words more at the women and also just exploring the role of women in general. And then, as we said before, As You Like It is part of the comedy genre. So we read a couple comedies in class that we'll compare it to. First, Much Ado About Nothing, True to the comedy genre, it ends with weddings, both end with multiple weddings between multiple couples. And another interesting thing is that the main villains are the brothers of good and kind characters.
Another comedy we read where there's a lot of overlap was Twelfth Night. We have deception and cross-dressing, as Rosalind pretended to be a man named Ganymede, and a woman fell in love with her who was being chased by another man. This was much like how Olivia fell in love with Viola as Cesario while being chased by Orsino. There was also a court fool as a main character that seemed to hold a lot of knowledge about the other characters in the play. Both plays ended with multiple weddings. There have been multiple productions. One production was done by the Globe Theatre in 2010, which stuck close to the historical aspects of the play and the text. However, they took some unique takes on characters that was left open-ended by Shakespeare. Most productions have Orlando not know that Rosalind is Ganymede until the end, but here they had him find out halfway through and play along. Another production was a movie in 2006. This one was unique by setting it in 19th century Japan as a way to emphasize the encounters and possibilities that can occur while the characters are traveling through the forest.
So now we'd like to share some quotes with you. The first one is, "In this our life, exempt from public haunt, finds tongues in trees, books in the running brooks, sermons in stones, and good in everything." And this is said by Duke Signor, who again is the Duke who's banished into the Forest of Arden. And it kind of shows his optimism, even in this exile that he's in. And it carries a major theme throughout the play of, again, emphasizing the good that can happen in the forest, away from the public eye and away from society.
Another quote is, "I pray you, do not fall in love with me, for I am falser than vows made in wine." This is said by Rosalind while she's pretending to be a man to the shepherdess that fell in love with her. So it regards heavily to deception and how it interacts with the theme of love within the play.
All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man, in his time, plays many parts. This is a reflection of this entire play, as characters move through comedy and romance, experiencing different things that they hadn't before. This really ties into life and connected with Shakespeare's audience and is important for us today as we remember that there are so many different stages of life and things continue to pass for us.
"'Twas I, but 'tis not I. I do not shame to tell you what I was, since my conversion so sweetly tastes, being the one thing I am." This is Oliver. It's later in the play. Oliver has come to the Forest of Arden and also found change. He's gone through a marvelous experience that has broadened his whole vision. He's really gotten a different outlook on life.
So why should we read it? Or why should you guys read it? There's a few ideas here. First, you can get an idea of what life was like in Shakespeare's time with the culture and the context. Second, there's lots of clever lines and humor throughout the play. And also, it's just a lighthearted love story, and this makes it relatively easy to read. And then another reason that I really liked it, I just loved the exploration of seeing what you can do in nature that you can't do in society.
I really liked the freedom that the actors have with this play. Compared to other works of Shakespeare's, the actors in this play interact with the audience a lot more, and as being part of the audience is just a lot of fun.
I love the language that Shakespeare uses in this play. He really has a command over memorable quotes and is really easy to read.
Things keep moving, things keep progressing. Like it says, it's very lighthearted, but we're able to see change. We're able to see the change in the story, and that's what makes it so exciting. It's a comedy, so you know everything's going towards marriage. You don't know who's going to get married to who. These are our references, so if you'd like to look into more of our source material, then you can take a look at those. It's a good place to look.